Audacious Rebel. So, joining us today on the path of the Audacious Rebel is Reverend McDonald, Bill McDonald, an extraordinary human being who epitomizes what it means to be an audacious rebel. An award-winning poet, a best-selling author of over a dozen books, a Vietnam War veteran honored with prestigious accolades, including the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Bronze Star, 14 Air Medals, the Purple Heart, and the Vietnamese Cross for gallantry. Reverend McDonald's remarkable journey spans over 7 decades. He has traveled extensively across the globe, from the serene landscapes of India to the vibrant cities of New York and Hawaii, and even conducted workshops in England, Germany, and Switzerland. He has had numerous spiritual transformative experiences, including 3 near-death experiences and supernatural events during his combat service in the Vietnam War. His acclaimed autobiography, Warrior, a spiritual odyssey, chronicles his quest for love, understanding, forgiveness, and enlightenment. His sequel, Alchemy of a Warrior Heart, further explores his mystical encounters, including his 4 transformative trips to India, where he connected with holy men and witnessed miracles. Above all, he's a mystic and a teacher of energy healing through the transformative power of love. Tune in as we explore his incredible journey and the timeless lessons he has to share. Reverend Bill McDonald, welcome.
Well, I'd like to meet this character. He sounds like an interesting guy.
Very.
Good morning from cool California. I mean, we're down to, it's below 50 outside, so we're freezing here.
Yeah, we cool as well in Atlanta today.
So, yeah, we were having an interesting conversation before this started, and I got a feeling this thing is going to go off into all kinds of crazy areas. So I'm looking forward to talking with you and sharing this.
Definitely. I think we will need some days to sit with each other and just communicate and talk. Well, I mean, your experiences, I have been reading your book, and you could find it online. You'll see it in my link as well on this channel, where you can find all his material, his website and whatnot. Definitely an extraordinary man. Now, this season of this podcast is entitled Crime as a Catalyst for Transformation, and we want to focus on crime a bit. Now, I know you have not been in law enforcement, even though you were in the military and in Vietnam, but your experiences are vast, and it definitely would have shaped how you perceive life on the whole. How do you define crime, Reverend McDonald?
Well, I'm not one of these original sinner people. It's like, that's a sin, this is that. To me, is crimes are things that go against your natural state of godness. In other words, it's the off-balanced behavior that goes against your true nature, which is divine. So a crime, it can be defined, I mean, if you're living in some countries, it's a crime to be gay, it's a crime to be capitalist or whatever, or speaking against the leadership. So crimes, I don't go with that category. Well, what's on the books crime?
Right.
Crimes are the things that hurt your heart and hurt your life and hurt others. So I mean, we got people in jail that have served, because I've met people when I was chaplain at Folsom, in jail for 15, 20 years for doing marijuana, back
Right.
in the 50s and 60s. It's like, I go, oh, these poor guys. I mean, it was like crime of the century for them. Like, oh my God, they're smoking dope. So crime is relative.
Yes,
Obviously,
it's a social construct, of course.
But we can agree that harming somebody physically, mentally, and spiritually, those are the crimes.
But let's look at that. Let's look at that harming somebody, because when you change the context, and let's say you go to war, you're going to be unaliving people, and then you become decorated, you become awarded when you hurt people, when you unalive people. Then people may say, well, these are people who you may have some conflict with. But in any war, you are going to have innocent bystanders, or what they would call casualties of war or collateral damage. How do you categorize these behaviors and in terms of crime? Because the behavior, the act is the same.
It is interesting because in my newest book, which comes out next month, Cosmic Chronicles, I get a series of spiritual essays. And one of the things I tackle is killing people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you point out, if you're in the military, you kill somebody, bravo, and if you're a cop and you kill somebody, well, it could be either way, right? Nowadays, it could be either way. And so it's not the act necessarily, it's what's defined by your intentions. So when I was in Vietnam, and trust me, I mean, I got shot, blown up, shot down. I mean, I was in combat. I was almost captured. I mean, I was shot down in the middle of the jungle, and it was just me and this captain, this black guy. And what's interesting is there wasn't that many black helicopter pilots in Vietnam. So when you had one, if you were lucky enough to have one, you know, back then, that guy had to really go through a lot of stuff to become that. Right. Probably the best pilot in the unit because he had to be way overboard good, right?
Especially at that time, right?
Yeah. So me and him were out in the middle of the jungle, and we had 500 North Vietnamese uniformed troops, and it was just the two of us, which is another old story for another show. But when you shoot at people, see, my whole thing was people are shooting at me. I have to shoot back because I don't want them to kill my buddy here, this captain, right?
Right.
And I don't want them to kill or shoot down my helicopter or whatever else. So you're there. You have a job. Your job is not to kill, maim, injury, destroy humans. Your job is to suppress their gunfire. And if they're killed in action trying to kill you, it's okay they're trying to kill you. They're doing their job. I don't have any anger.
Right.
There was never any hate or anger towards them. And I actually prayed for those that I was firing against, and I didn't want people to suffer. And that sounds crazy. Are you praying for people you shoot? Well, they're trying to kill me. I'm sorry. I got to shoot back. So, but if a doctor does an operation on you and they're drunk or they're on drugs and they kill you because they cut the wrong thing, that's a crime. If they unintentionally do the same thing, it's not a crime. So this whole thing is definitions, but the main thing, it's intentions. What's your intentions? Because there's a time and a place. And if you look at the Bible, it's interesting because the Bible's like this, history book, really, and it's got a lot of mythology and it's got stories and people take it. Oh, it's verbatim. Really? Okay. Because there's some interesting things.
It's a hodgepodge.
Oh, yeah. So if I mix wool with rayon, I'm in trouble. That's a sin. I mean, come on, we should stone you to death because so. But in the Bible, Joshua fits the Battle of Jericho. Okay, great story. And then you really examine it. His God talks to him. He hears God talking to him, right? And God says, you go into that city, because I promised you I was going to give you a city, right? So you go in there and you kill every man, woman, child, and living thing in that city, and it's yours. Because God told you to go do it. That's friggin' genocide. But it's in the Bible, so it has to be good. So get back to the definitions. To me, that was a crime. I'm sorry. It's like every man, woman, child, dog, horse, everything. You killed everything. So,
and that's like the situation in Guyana with Jim Jones. That's like David Koresh.
There you go. So all these guys out there that hear God's voice and now they're going to go kill somebody, you got to say, the God you believe in is different than the God I believe in. My God wouldn't tell me to sacrifice my first child on an altar like David was supposed to do and tested him with the knife he's going to carve up his son.
Abraham.
Until he heard God's voice again say, no, that was just a test. No, you don't test me trying to cut my son up. Sorry. Nowadays, we'd say that person belongs in a mental institution or jail. There's something wrong with them. So now I probably stepped on 90% of your audience's toes with that because they look at how could you criticize something in the Bible? Well, if you look in the Bible, how many wars that were fought, and they're all blessed. They're all correct. They're doing God's work. and I'm sure the Germans were in God they trust too. They're wiping out all these people, and we're in God trust, and everybody we killed with the atomic bomb. We did it because we're the holy Christian nation, and we bombed Tokyo. 100,000 people burned to death. People forget about, well, the atomic bombs were bad, but Tokyo we napalmed, and it was all wooden buildings. Over 100,000 people died in one night. I mean, you can't even imagine that.
It's
And
something, Bill, because as a cop, I communicated with a lot of persons who would have been involved in crime. And there was one particular guy who would pray before he goes to do a robbery.
Huh?
And he said he think God used to hear him because he was never hurt and he never had cause to hurt anybody. And he was successful.
There you go. So to go back to crime. Crime is a mind thing, and obviously, when you hurt somebody else, it goes from it's the mind, and now it's actually an action. And so, yeah, I met a lot of people working with prisoners, and not as many of them as you think say they're innocent. Alone with them as a chaplain, yeah, I did it. Yeah, I did it. Yeah, I killed 5 people or whatever. Some pretty bad guys. I mean, it was pretty bad. But what's interesting is, because I was dealing with these 2 guys, they were 2 older black gentlemen, and in fact, that's how I talked to people there, and nobody was beating me up. It wasn't like you're a prisoner, I'm the chaplain. It was like, Mister. They don't do that in prisons. It's all, you're always the animal. You're the cage, and I had trouble with that. So it's like when you get all these people together, and I had like 25 of them. My first meeting there, they put me in a room that was about the size of a small bedroom, and I had 25 basically killers in there. And it was me. I didn't have a device to call if I needed any help. And they said, we'll be back in 2 hours, right? Because I was at work with these guys. A little 5'6", 5'7" guy. And all these, even the old guys, working on the weights and everything in Folsom. And by the time I got through with these guys, I had them all crying. It was behind closed doors, right? And they were crying, and they're talking about their childhood. And you hear the stories of their childhoods. And you go, my God, that's the mold is being, it's being created now. I mean, it's like this guy watching his father beat up his mother, and to death, and somebody else, raping him, and I mean, all kinds of stuff. And you go, holy cow. And so it's not all of a sudden these guys go berserk. There's a story behind every one of them. And even though they're guys, they have a side of them that wants to be hugged. They got a side of them. Somebody loved me. I mean, even these guys that are rapists and done all kinds of terrible things, and they got no respect even for themselves. They're dying for somebody just to listen and say, "You're a human being." Prisons like Folsom, San Quentin, all the ones that I've been around, we're not rehabilitating or rehabilitating any of these people. We take somebody that has done something very terrible, and then we throw them in a cage with other people who have done something really terrible, and somehow we expect good results from that. It's like,
so now they're in an institution of training now. Now they're going to share stories, and you're going to see who's going to be the worst and who's going to learn.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And everybody wants to be the biggest, baddest guy.
Right.
So anyway, when I had this whole room of guys crying, and it was interesting because the only argument we had was it was 2 guys, and they were the original, according to them, the original founders of the Crips. And in the 50s or 60s or something. And they were like they accomplished something. That was their accomplishment in life, right? And actually, in a crazy way, they were kind of a leader, right? And these young guys were not giving these old guys credit for what they did to create the Crips, right?
Right.
And it was like, yeah, because they didn't have the alpha male power anymore. It was like, you're an old dude. So it was kind of interesting as they lost respect from the young people. It changed who they were and what they were in their place, and because they've been there all their life, pretty much, went in as young men. So I learned a lot. But when the session was over, just before it was over, this guy was just talking about this crip guy. He goes, he looks at the rest of the guy and he says, "If any of you guys talk about what we talked about in here, I'll kill you." And they all kind of wiped their tears away and everything because they all gave up their souls in there.
Mm.
And then,
so they're sharing with you in confidence,
yes,
their hearts, but it's not something they want the world to know.
Exactly
So you're identifying now as a sort of peer pressure. They got to live up to a certain ideal that they have been identified with.
I mean, they can't go out there and have people go, "Oh, he broke down and cried about his childhood," and blah blah blah. I mean, they're all tough guys. When they left there, it was like, the guards.
You have reflected on numerous criminal theories in the 5-10 minutes you've been speaking there. Social conditioning, culturing. You spoke about childhood trauma. So you're looking at biological, there's one theorist that said the sociology of one generation becomes the biology for the next. So now, with that mindset, their offsprings automatically would be born with certain predispositions, which is a biological determinant. Based on what you're saying, are you saying that in some ways, these people who commit criminal acts are not totally responsible for their behavior?
Give anybody that, because I have a broader belief system that says everything in your life you've manifested. You just don't know how you manifested it.
Okay.
So, and if you believe in reincarnation or whatever, I believe in a just universe and a just God, meaning you're just not born into a family that's crazy. There's a reason for it. And either you're there to save them or change them or learn something or pay for something or whatever. So, yeah, in a group of Christians, let's say, that don't believe in reincarnation, then they would say, "Oh yeah, these poor people are all victims." And in my world, I'm teaching people, no one's a victim.
Correct.
No one.
Okay.
If you've got crappy parents and all this stuff, every decision you make after that is your decision, your choice. It's not, well, my parents, it was because of them and it was the way I was raised and I was poor. I've seen kids coming out of some cities that the siblings are in jail, this, that. And then there's one kid that ends up going to Yale, and you got to go, what happened? He had the same environment.
Mm-hmm.
If that's possible. I mean, it's always different depending where you're born and everything, but typically the same conditions. So I don't let people off on that excuse. And I even tell prisoners that I'm going, because they want to be a victim. It's right. Like, I'm a product of my environment.
Right.
But to go back to what you're saying, when your parents are a certain way, the criminals, like your mother's in jail, boy, it's worse than the father being in jail. The ones that had their mothers in jail, it was actually worse. You expect your mother to be that loving, caring thing there, right? And your mother's serving 5 years for shoplifting or something, and you go. So it was harder on them. But you say, okay, all this stuff happened, so now whatever you do, it's just part of your breeding. That's just who you are. And I go, no, you got to be stronger than that. So you have to teach young people, and that's where it starts. You got to teach young people that everybody can change. You don't have to follow what's being modeled for you by your parents or society or your neighborhood or the gang or the family or whatever. Everything you do, you choose to do. Now, I took this. There's a theory, a psychological theory that's prevalent, and it's about exactly what we're talking about. How you're raised, what happens to you, molds you for your future. So therefore, you can see this guy didn't have a hug and love, and then he ends up being like this. And so it's kind of like an excuse all that psychologists use. And so I was interviewed by this college kid who was having to write a paper, and that was an assignment. And his professor believed in this theory of attachment, the attachment theory.
Mm.
And he says, well, he says, read your stuff and listen to your things. I know you got a little different take on this. And he says, I'm getting ready to write my paper on this. Can I do an interview with you? You know? So I interviewed him. I said, well, if you listen to my interview and you follow what I'm doing, you're either going to get an F, you know, hard enough to get, or you're going to get an A. There's no in between on this, right?
Right.
So, and so I got a video out there where I talk about this. And so he wrote about what I said, and that's basically every choice that you make, you're responsible for. Nobody else. You can choose, because my childhood was not that great. I mean, a stepfather and crazy guy, and all kinds of stuff. So, but you choose everything that happens as an adult, most especially. A child is kind of hard, but as an adult, you make all those choices. And I said, there is no attachment theory. This happens doesn't mean this has to happen. You attach to the divine. So I'm trying to teach, when I was with prisoners, I'm trying to teach people, don't look at what's surrounded you, look what's inside. And that's divine. No matter what you've done on the outside and what's going on, inside is still divine. And so when
you're born in a particular environment,
it's hard. It's hard to overcome. Hard. But now let's go back to the prison. So what are prisoners doing? They go into jail and they got all day long, all week long, all year long, decades long, sit around, and they're not nurturing anything except the skills you need in prison. And social life is with other people that are just like yourself. And if those guys ever do get out, we haven't done anything for them. Now, the old guys, I'm kind of like, I don't have enough time, and there's too many of them. But it's the first-time offenders. It's a guy that's 17, 18, 19, 20, maybe 25. They're salvageable. They made stupid mistakes on their hormones and their young thinking, and with proper amount of education, meaning both academically and spiritually and emotionally, you have an opportunity to evolve and change these people. It's their thinking and their habits. And you need to separate these people from the hardcore. I guess you want to know how to fix this. I thought about this a lot, but I look at European jails and I'm looking at what they're doing in Sweden and Denmark and all these places. I go, wow, when they get out of jail, very few come back in again. And they're not punishing. The guys have his own rooms, like a dorm room,
They're in a hotel.
Yeah, it's like, we're taking you out of society because you're dangerous or did something, right? Time out. Mm-hmm. But while you're here, you're going to learn something. But if you treat people like animals, they will be animals. And if you treat people with a little compassion and you can separate them from that, you got a better chance to change them. But the older you get, it's like a tree. The branch is stiff. You can't bend the branch anymore. But when it's a young tree, a young man, most especially, we're doing a disservice to the young men in this country. When you take a look at how many young men end up in prison and jail, my God, what are we doing? Locking them up. That's not a solution. So, yeah, I'm kind of, you don't realize this because we didn't really much talk, but I'm really against taking the young and treating them so barbaric. It's like the old mental hospitals, they just lock people up, there wasn't any treatment. So people come in there and they need to see a different vision of themselves. And that's why people like you or me should be volunteering to go into prisons and giving talks and lectures to these people and showing that, hey, look, there is something outside. And if you can't get back outside, there's something inside that will sustain you. And there's still places to find joy, hope, and love. Even if you're locked up, you can't lock up the mind and the heart. And so trying to teach people, especially people I was with, because they're not going to get out for a long, long time, if ever. And I said, well, you could be a caged animal forever, or you could be free within. and cultivate that, and then help the new guys coming in. My whole thing was get the old guys to help the young guys coming in, because they come in, they're scared, they don't know what's going on. So it's it's like taking an alcoholic that stops drinking, joins joins AA. Who's best to help another alcoholic? A reformed alcoholic. Who's best to help a young prisoner? An old prisoner.
No, Bill, I worked in both corrections and I was a cop. So I worked both within the prison system and as a police officer for over 25 years. And I would have had a lot of personal one-on-one relationship or communication with who you would call die-hard criminals. And a lot of them would respect me because of what I've shared and the perspective I give. And I just try to be true and real to them. But when they've got to deal with the rest of the environment, the environment that shaped them and cultured them, I'm one voice. How impactful do you think?
The nation or the state, if it's Georgia, California, whatever, the area has to be on board with this, and Americans in particular are into this. You did something, just cut your hand off, you're a thief, right? It's that mentality, the death penalty. My God, the state is going to decide to kill you. It's terrible. And he killed somebody. So what are we going to do?
Kill him back.
We're going to kill him.
Yeah, kill him.
It's like
we're going to do exactly what he did. We're going to do
exactly. So I'm going, wow. I'm not a opponent of death penalties because you could have 1,000 guys on death row. There's one or two that really, really, honestly, statistically, there'll be several that really are innocent, honestly innocent. If they've done studies, right? And once you kill them, you can't go back and ever correct that error.
But Bill, I'm glad you mentioned that because this was something definitely I wanted to discuss with you. There's a cry for justice, and there are a lot of victims of crime, and when they've been hurt or harmed, they want justice. And in my perspective, justice to them is revenge, either legally or by divine intervention. Revenge. How do you define justice from your perspective?
Well, first off, there's justice in the world. And then there's political justice, with this looking more like retribution. Crazy world out there in politics. And then there's the divine justice, which is starting with, and here's where I start with. It sounds crazy. You go, wait, that's not the subject. No. If I'm starting with trying to get somebody to advance, evolve, it's never too late. Advance, evolve. I don't care what age they are. You have to teach people to start by loving themselves, by forgiving themselves, and having gratitude for whatever's happened to in their life. And that includes the ugly, the bad, all that stuff, because everything was a gift. It was up to them to discover what the gift was. What did this teach me about life? What did I get from this? And that's the hard part for these people, because it's like, shit, what gifts? It's all crap, right? So, but getting somebody to love themselves, even in a non-criminal person, quote unquote, it's not there. That's my biggest hurdle worldwide as I go around the world. People don't forgive themselves. They can forgive others. And these criminals, they don't really forgive themselves for their crimes. They really don't. I don't care how many years they've been in jail. It's like, they hate what they did, even though they won't admit it so much to another prisoner. But there's a guilt that's just huge. I mean, and I'm going, you know what? Wake up every day, be a new you. In other words, every day is a rebirth. Who you were yesterday is dead. Bury it. Be who you are today. If you want to be a saint today, be a saint today. You still got karma. You still got debt. It's like, well, I've been eating 10,000 calories a day, but today I'm not, so I should be skinny. No. You still got the weight to deal with. So same thing with your guilt. You're going to change your guilt to, all right, there's a debt. We'll pay that. But I'm forgiving me. And because the newer me realizes that the younger me was pretty damn stupid. It's like, in ignorance and stupidity or in anger or whatever, these things happen.
I want to go back a bit to the justice, and you spoke about forgiveness and loving oneself. But it sounds good, and I'm not trying to minimize what you're saying. But here I am, 5 years old. My dad was murdered for a crime he did not commit. I've seen my mother abused by men, one after the other. I've seen my sister being taken advantage of in an impoverished environment where sometimes we're not sure what we're going to eat today. And here I am trying my best, and I've been facing injustice myself. And you're telling me in the midst of that, in spite of what transpired, that I should know what it means to love and forgive.
The trouble is, people are never educated. Let's take this. You don't get an education. Nobody in school or in a social group or anywhere, nobody tells you how to love. Nobody tells you how to love yourself. Right. Nobody tells you when you got all this crap around you that just because crap is around you doesn't make you crap. Nobody's teaching these young people this. And I say, that's where this thing has to start. Later on in life, you're dealing with some people that, please, it's hardcore. You're picking the same guy up. They're set in their ways. I'm talking about, you want to change? You got to change with the young. You got to take the people 25 years and younger, and you got to work those guys. And when they go in for the first offense, the judge and everybody's got to be looking at ways not to put them in hardcore confinement. You got to find alternate solutions, halfway houses or something, or some kind of dormitory thing, or there's
separated from the environment that shaped them.
Yeah, because let's get true to this. There's people out there that live in such an environment that me telling them you got to love yourself, that's falling on deaf ears, because it's like, hey, here's what I went through. Well, I've seen my share of crap. It's like, no, you still got to make the choice. But to have somebody in your life that's some kind of mentor, whether it's a teacher, a police officer, a community worker, an uncle, an aunt, somebody, a grandmother, usually people underestimate the power or influence of grandparents. Grandmothers, if you got a good grandma, that's gold. They never give up on you. I don't care what you've done. They love you. They'll write you in jail. I've seen it, right?
Remember the story of DMX.
Yeah. So grandparents, so what is it about? So these grandparents, and they've been through crap themselves, but they reach a part in time where it's like, I love my grandchild no matter what. It doesn't matter. But society doesn't make a good grandparent. Society says, you did this crap, therefore you are crap.
Right.
And we're going to talk to you like that, and we're going to treat you like that. And I'm saying someplace along the line, it's got to change. Now, let's get real. There are people in jail that should never be set free. They're a danger to everybody, including themselves. Let's get real. This is a bad apple. It's not going to happen this lifetime. So, but you don't want those people mingling with these people that are just in for some stupid 7-Eleven robbery where they got $80. Okay, let's talk about crime. I'll tell you what a crime in this country is. You could be a billionaire and you got this Ponzi scheme and you got $28 billion that you ripped everybody off on.
Bernie Madoff, right?
You get the greatest lawyers and you go to this white-collar prison and maybe you get 8-10 years or something. Mm-hmm. And this kid that gets $70 from an armed robbery, and you throw a book at him. Right. It's like, what? So you talked about justice earlier, and I'm telling you right now, if you're looking for justice in the justice system is a mislabeled word. Right. There is no justice in the justice system. There's a punitive action from this group, but is it justice? Is it revenge by society? And when you give somebody like in New Orleans, these guys can't even get a defense attorney. I mean, my God, if you get a public defender in Louisiana, Mississippi, God help you. And you end up, and the guy goes, well, I got 50 cases this week. Why don't you just plead guilty? We can make a deal. And the guys, I know they're pleading guilty, and they haven't even done it because they can't take a chance if they don't, because they're going to put them in for 20 years, versus 5 if they say, yeah, okay, I'll confess. So is that justice? No. So can we fix it all right away? No. But we need to start, and it starts with the president and the governor and the mayor and all the people down below.
Well, it's something,
community leaders.
It's something you said that, yesterday in the inauguration. President Trump signed a declaration talking about reforming the criminal justice system.
I didn't even want to talk about it yesterday. They took a beautiful day, Martin Luther King Day, and they turned it into the monarchy crowning day. So now I offended another half of your audience. So justice is a bad word. It's not. It's got so many definitions, but true justice is a divine thing. It's a balance of karma. And people that are looking for justice, they're looking for it in their lifetime. They want to see, oh, this guy's doing all this stuff. When's he going to get punished for this?
Yes.
It's not your job. It's God's job. So the real justice is to do yourself justice. Be the best you can be in the circumstances that you got. And if you are in jail, still, same advice. Be the best you can be. Help those around you. Find yourself serving your fellow inmates, being an asset to them instead of an enemy. But you can't be so naive, because I've been in jails. You can't be so naive walking around thinking everybody loves you, because even a good guy, a minister or somebody in jail, they'll cut you up in a minute just because I went in there and the chaplain before me, in the same room I was in, I was telling you I was locked in with these guys. Somebody had snuck a razor blade in there and they cut the guy's face up. Wow. One time they took him out, his face was all lacerated.
Chaplain?
Seriously. Wow. So it was like, but see that chaplain was in there, and he's an alpha male, and he's on top of the world, and when there's this non-threatening old guy, their manhood wasn't threatened. And I wasn't there to tell them you're bad. I'm in there to say, basically, you're divine. You're not acting that way. There's no evidence out there that you're doing that, but your nature is divine. And if left to grow in the right environment, you would be more divine. Excuse me. And you can be. So trying to solve things with criminal justice, there is no such thing. Unfortunately, we take our police force, who doesn't have, and I tell you, my son, he didn't study psychology and all these things, and they put him in these environments, and then he's going, if he has to make a split decision on something, yes, and he's going to be held responsible if he makes a wrong decision. It's like, I mean, when he got out, it was like, thank God I didn't blow anything, but it was like, every day you went there and you pull somebody over, you don't know if that guy's going to come out and do something to you or file a complaint against you, or, anything could happen. So, yep. And the honor of being a police officer, now we've tainted it so much that we can't recruit good people. It's very hard to recruit good people anymore, because it should be an employment of more enlightened officers that are, really, they want to preserve, protect, and all the serve and all that kind of stuff. Probably the most difficult.
It just can't be somebody wanted a job and wanted to get salary.
No, can't be. You got to be dedicated. And I tell you what, you don't pay a cop enough.
I wanna reflect a little more on the justice thing. We looked at criminals and the justice system as it pertains to justice, but how do persons who have been aggrieved, persons who are victims of crime, the dad, he lost his only daughter to murder, a husband whose wife was raped in front of him. Now you caught the criminals, you caught those who perpetrated the act. How should that father or that husband, how should he, how does he cope with this?
You don't
How does
really.
he get justice? Justice to him is seeing they being hurt for the hurt they caused to his family. How does he get justice?
Well, this is an individual thing, and it really is based on their faith and beliefs. That's the key. How they're going to do this thing, because some people they'll forgive. That's the part of the religious training, and some people will never forgive. They've been violated so bad. I tell people, hate the sin, the crime, and go to court. Tell people, and I think having the victims testify in court at the sentencing is important. How did it affect them? They need to be heard.
Victims.
Okay, they need to be heard. Now, it's up to the judge to decide where that goes, but they need to be heard, and the criminal needs to hear for his growth or her how it affected others. You did this, but it affected this whole family of people, right?
Right.
And they're never going to be the same. So, there's one victim. You shot this kid. Random shooting, drive by. There's the parents. Here's the grandparents, and here's the siblings, and
But some of the criminals, that is what exactly what they want to do. They want to hurt the entire family. They want everybody to feel that pain.
yeah. So for them to have a spiritual mentor of some kind in their life, which there's not many out there, that family needs counseling. First off, if nothing else, they got PTSD, from losing. I mean, it's like they've been in combat.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the loss of a loved one. Even if the loved one was a criminal themselves, it doesn't matter. I mean, like people go, wow, people don't understand that. No, my son was this bad dude, but he didn't deserve to get shot by this bad dude, right? I mean, you still love family, right? And so you don't balance the justice off by allowing anyway. But these families, they hurt, and then the offspring, it hurts for generations. So you don't want to train people to carry generational anger and hate. So if I was your minister, and that was one of my parish people, when somebody in my congregation, we'd be having classes and starting with loving yourself and forgiving yourself. Can't forgive somebody else if you can't forgive yourself, because having anger and revenge for the person that did something makes you the judge and makes you the perpetrator of more anger and more violence. And so you got to go, wait a minute, if I'm against anger and violence and all this stuff that happened, I'm becoming a part of that. I'm in the web. And even though it looks like justice, it's basically the same animal. And so the Irish into revenge. I mean, hundreds of years fighting the British, and you killed my brother, I kill your brother. I mean, it's like the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Yeah, we saw Braveheart.
Yeah, and the Irish, my God, it's you got Sean, you killed Sean, my brother. It's like we got to get you and your family. So it's like culturally, it's bad in some cultures. I'm saying Irish is one of those cultures that they have a long memory. Long memory, and vengeance may be cold, but it's coming someday, right? So I don't teach that, and I'm telling you that I'm in a minority, because people do believe in vengeance. Let's look what happened to Israel. Terrible, terrible terrorism to come in there and they take 1,200 people. That was, killed them, and it was awful. There's no way you can justify that any way you want. So Israel went in there and they killed 48,000 people, and leveled the cities, and then leveled parts of Lebanon and the West Bank and the Gaza, and hit some other countries, Arab countries. I'm going, where does that stop? When is enough punishment? Especially when you see children, literally children's arms hanging in a pile of rubble. And I'm going, When is enough? So they went from being victims, but the world was very sympathetic to them. I was. And then when I heard the prime minister go, or the head of the defense saying, using Battle of Jericho as justification, he used Joshua, the story of Joshua, as a motivation for his troops. And I'm going, he's just telling them genocide. But it's like, go in there and level the place. It was like, what? They didn't stop terrorism. They've created more terrorists. Those people growing up, they lost their parents, they lost a sibling. You've
Children, you see crying in the rubble.
Yeah, you just justified what those guys were fighting for. So instead of going in with just because you're the most powerful guy in the block and you could beat everybody up, don't do it.
Correct.
I mean, they were justified to strike for a week or two, and and then boom, let's negotiate, let's get our people back, and look at the roots of what's happening, because now that's going to go three generations. The people remember that for 2-3 generations, and Israelis are going to remember the stuff that happened. It was bad that happened to them. It was bad. I mean, in any logical person other than me, they're going to say that was justified. You did that to them, and they're going to don't ever do it again. Well, people don't think like that. You retaliated on them, but they don't go, "Oh, we did this to them. That's why they did that to us." No, you did this to us. End of story. We don't care what we did to you. That's where we get into trouble. And so this is not just an individual justice thing in crime and punishment. This is a national, international war thing. It's the same thing, because the Ukrainians, people don't realize they've been fighting, and the Russians have been fighting for about 150 years against each other. There's been stuff going on. They hate each other. So it's never ending. So how do you end all this? We'll start in our neighborhood. Okay? Start with yourself, reach out to other people in your neighborhood, work with them. And but if we have a movement where we're asking men, most especially, to become mentors in neighborhoods, men that have overcome this stuff, or men that are strong enough they didn't have to overcome anything, they need somebody in their life. And most of these young criminals, they don't have a father that they can, have strength from. And they need models. And even if I mentored foster kids, they were in foster homes, and I'd go out and do things with them, mentor them. They were in group homes, and tough job. And it's commitment. It's harder than raising your own kids, and it's heartbreaking when you see you fail, because it's not 100%. You see failures. But I have confidence in the long picture, the deep picture. I'm betting on the future, that eventually we're going to be a more enlightened society on how we handle this. It doesn't appear that way right now. Now it's all venge. It's we're first, number one, to hell with everybody else. You're a bad guy. You're going to jail. We want more people on death row. I mean, that was supposed to be a great thing. They all plotted, we're going to kill more people. I'm going, President's saying we should kill more people on death row. I go, holy cow. He's representing my culture. I'm going, and people will justify it. Yeah, we need to do that. We need to kill these people.
No, two things. I got it a lot from what you've just shared, Reverend McDonald. Not only what you're saying, not only do we have to address the criminal and their behavior to transform and shift that mindset, but even the victims, because now the victims, based on what they may have experienced, may perpetuate the same mindset as the criminal because they want to do what was done to them. So it's more than just the pastor speaking a nice word at the funeral, but there must be some sort of reform, not just for the criminal, but for the victim as well.
And it actually even goes beyond that. It starts your leadership. If you got a leadership that's preaching hate and anger and revenge, uh, and it's justified, yeah, you can, if it's the right reason, you can do these things. The whole society is on trial here. The whole society. But how much power do you have? How much power do I have? I have control over me and what I can say and do. I can use my tools, fix me first. You got to fix yourself first. You got to become the example because words are words. Being a living example, it's different. Because if you're not walking your talk, people know that right away. And we got a lot of people that aren't walking their talk. And talks don't work. I mean, you give a sermon. I give a sermon. I go sermons all over the world, right? And everybody's for 15, 20 minutes, they leave there and they're just, wow, they're, as soon as they get in traffic and somebody cuts them off, they flip them off. And it's like, and they're back in their own world about 2 hours later. It's short-lived. Sermons don't change people. Being a living example changes people. Being attentive to other people's wounds without crippling them with, oh, you poor person, all this happened to you. No wonder you're like, but if you're there to listen to them truly and say, okay, you got that. You recognize that they went through that. But at some point, you got to train them to step out of the muck. Don't be a victim and move on. But can you control the guards, the police, the politicians, the ministers, the teachers, the neighborhoods, the gang people around them? The person you're talking to at that moment, the person you're walking the talk with, you work on this thing one-on-one. And so if I was really looking to revise things, I'd be giving more training to people to become mentors and people, their job's not even listed as a mentor, because I think police officers are potentially great mentors, and because they know their neighborhoods, they know their people, they know what's going on.
Let's look at that. Let's look at that right there, Bill. Just put a pin there. When you look at mentors, or what you define mentors to be, like psychologists and whatnot. No, let's look at you.
Okay.
Your experience is what is primarily have been responsible for shaping you, your perspectives and how you see life. In our society, one attain a title after attending college, university. So now I'm a psychologist. I did my BA in psychology, or I did my counseling and mediation training in university. Does that now equip me, who have not walked the path, who have not felt the pain and understand what you understand based on the experiences you've had? How equipped are the mentors that we are churning out from the schools and the university? Are they equipped? And how do you really become a true mentor in the capacity in which you're speaking?
I think we talked earlier about the example of Alcoholics Anonymous, Drugs Anonymous, or whatever. I think the reformed person who's walked the path is fertile ground for creating a mentorship. So, and it's like my son when he hears me say, "I got to be a psychologist out there," and then they send people to give him training on how to handle people. He says, "Those people are trainers and shit. They have no idea that we're facing a guy that could turn around and tear my head off, and they want me to go through this whole thing and follow this guidelines and this and that." And he says, "I'm protecting me first, and I'm protecting the victims around me, and then we worry about the guy, right?" This is something. It's not going to be fixed in 5 years. Okay. It's not going to be fixed in 20 years. But at the present rate that we're doing things and how we're doing things, it'll never be fixed. Somebody's got to say, start here.
Right.
Boom, start here. let's start a movement. And it's like PTSD veterans. Let's go to an example. When I come back from Vietnam, there was no such thing as PTSD. We were just crazy vets. They treated us terrible. Everybody ignored us. Veterans, we had to start take care of ourselves. And I was counseling veterans. I didn't charge anybody. I was doing veterans in 1970. I mean, taking care of people. And then the new wars happened, the terrorist wars. And the VA wasn't taking care of anybody. It was the Vietnam veterans that stood up, the old guys, and took these young guys come back and say, hey, you're part of the tribe, brother. We're here to help you. Vietnam vets started all these counseling centers, all these groups. There's something about the power of a group of people going through the same thing. I don't know what the right word for it, a work team, whatever, support team, a group. But when you get people together and they have an opportunity to share and be heard, and then there's a wisdom born of that group where, oh, I went through that. There's group mentoring, which is effective as well, because I set up some groups to do that. But there's a lot of things to do. So that's veterans. But the same thing with criminals. And they got all that time in jail. They could have support groups all over that prison. I mean, they could have these guys get together every day and talk and, and how would they handle this? And this guy's, his son's not talking to him on the outside and he's kind of worried. Well, other people have been through that. How do you do that? Do you get somebody to talk to your kid?
Audacious Rebel.
Do you leave your kid alone? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that these guys don't know how to handle. They'll come to me. I don't have the psychology degree. But they know I was there. I was shot. I was wounded. I was blown up. I was in combat. I shot at people. They shot at me. So I've been there. It's a credibility thing. So if I say, hey, look, you can overcome this, it's possible. So belief system is huge. A lot of guys don't believe, for example, you can overcome PTSD. Once you got PTSD, it's for life. They believe that. If you believe it, it's true. If you believe you can't change your criminal ways and and all this stuff, it's true. Power of belief. But if you get the kid to believe, or the young person to believe, or the old person to believe, easier with the young person. But if you get a young person to believe, I can change. That's who I was when I was 19 or 20. But that's not who I am at 28. That kid's gone. He's grown up. He's changed. He's evolved. Because recidivism, is that the word I'm looking for? Where you go back to
Recidivism, yes.
Yeah.
Go back to prison. Mm-hmm.
It is so predictably high.
Yes, it is.
That is a crime by society. Something's wrong. And when a guy gets out, oh, here's $250. Here's your clothes that you had when you came to jail that you don't fit anymore. And
go back to the environment.
Here's a bus ticket to go downtown. You don't have any place to go. You got enough for one night.
Yes.
A meal and a room for maybe 2 nights, right? And it's like, where's the group that's taking this guy someplace and saying, hey, let's get you going? And while you're in jail, we got a shortage of electricians and plumbers and carpenters and all these trades. It's a shortage. You got all these young men in jail. They got nothing better to do but study, learn, and be taught. These guys could come out with 3 or 4 or 5 years of experience learning all this stuff, learning all these trades in jail, and come out. They'll be hired.
Yes.
I don't care you robbed a grocery store. I need somebody who can fix the plumbing here. Come on, So we're missing an opportunity, because once a guy has a trade, and he can make good money in trades, $40-50 an hour, most of these trades.
Yes. Yeah.
It's better than college. This whole thing that we've done in society, we've told young people, y'all got to go to college. Y'all got to go to college. Well, you know what? Y'all can't be walking around in some office someplace or in a home computer or doing TikTok videos and being podcasters and all this other crap that we all do. Well, that's fun and great.
but somebody's got to flush the toilet and it has to work, and somebody's got to fix the electrical, somebody's got to fix a car, somebody's got to do the cement work, and somebody's got to dig a hole, and somebody's got to run a tractor, somebody's got to drive a big truck down the road. So we're missing an opportunity to give these people meaningful employment. When you're employed and you're making good money, you're not thinking about going knocking off a grocery store. It's having money in your pocket that you've earned. See, to have a young person actually get a paycheck and they get paid some worth, that does a lot to change their feelings. And then once they get on their feet, you change them, that changes their children. And that changes their children. So by you changing, you change 2 more generations.
When you're changing society.
And you roll it out. You roll it out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
So I look at this whole thing as a multiple faceted approach. I mean, mentoring, if you just had mentoring, it misses the mark. If you go to jail and you're not teaching them a trade or a skill, you're missing the mark. If you're not supporting them for the first 18 months or so when they get out of jail with psychological, emotional help, getting a place to stay, learning the. A kid goes to jail, he's 10 years, he gets out, he's 28 years old. He doesn't know how to pay bills, does not use a credit card, doesn't have any skills on the computer, doesn't have any life skills, doesn't know about insurance policies for his car, doesn't know about registration of a car, doesn't know how to get aid of any kind. He doesn't know the adult world. And all he knows is what he was when he was a kid, and he didn't have any of that. So skills and having skill sets gives hope. No guarantee they're still not going to get in trouble again. That's just life. It's, some people they're broken, but most people are just bent. So I always treat everybody like you're just bent. But when I find out somebody's broken, and there's some people are just going, you're not ready for me yet. Let life deal with you for a while. I'll come back in 5 years. There's some people that are not. You have to be realistic. There's some people in jail that are not going to change no matter what you do. It's broken, but you got to realize that. But you still don't have to treat them like an animal. We need support services because you want to really heal the whole system. You got to heal the whole system. We got police officers after a bad day or a bad week. They really need some softness. They really need their own compassion team, and not they turn on the news and the whole world's against cops.
Yeah.
So,
Bill, we could speak on this issue for 24 hours, especially with your experience so vast. I mean, we haven't even touched on 0.001 of your experience. There's so much things I wanted to talk about. I mean, 3 NDs, being in Vietnam, spiritual experience.
You got a program going as you move through subjects.
But we got a lot. Yeah, we'll get there. But we did cover a lot today. You shared there must be a holistic approach where solving this is concerned. There must be all involved, from the upper echelons to the lowest, from the leadership of society to those in the streets, the activists. And you talk about identifying and developing mentors both who are perpetrators and mentors who may be part of the justice system. Those who have walked the path can actually lead, and they got a story to tell. You spoke about love and forgiveness as it pertains to what true justice is, and you've shared a lot where that is concerned. There are 2 things that was really significant. You spoke about when you talk about the mentors, those who may have been criminals before and actually being utilized to now help the rehabilitative process. And the theme of my of this episode of this season actually is crime, which is crime as a catalyst for transformation. So here we can see crime being used as an opportunity to actually transform and bring forth that future that we're looking that we want to see, so definitely I am so grateful for you being here. Thank you so much. I know we are going to talk further in other shows. I don't know if you have any closing remarks.
So my last piece of advice is all you can do is all you can do. And depending on your level of connectedness with the justice system or life or politics or church or whatever it is you're at, where you're at is where you do what you can do. And that means if you're in a neighborhood and you see some kid that's not getting treated well and things are going bad and he's in trouble at school, hey, you want to mow my lawn? Come on over, give you a few bucks. Whatever you got to do to this kid, talk to him, be there. Sometimes a kid just needs to know that somebody's listening, somebody cares. So everybody's a potential solution. It's many parts to make up this jigsaw puzzle of justice. And it starts by eliminating the potential crime. That's where you really should start. But once the crime's there, now it's to eliminate those attributes in the criminal, change the criminal, the crime is gone.
It's something, I think it was Mother Teresa that said there's no justice without love and there's no love without justice. So
if there ain't no love, whatever you're doing is wrong.
Right. So, Mr. Reverend Dr. Bill McDonald, thank you so much to all my listeners for contacting him. You're going to see my link underneath. You're going to see his website, contact for his books, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, The Path of the Audacious Rebel. This is the movement that we are beginning. Time to become an audacious rebel and make a difference. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.